Welcome to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor and Rethink Retail Top Retail Expert for 2024. Each week, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share knowledge, and give you an insight into the retail industry. Listen back to previous episodes on your favourite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. And while you're there, please do subscribe to the podcast so that you get to listen first every single week. So in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. So on today's episode of the Retail Tea Break podcast, well, you've got me as I give you a quick rundown of some of the 25 episodes from 2024. Each week this year, I've been joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to decode the myths, share knowledge, and give you a better insight into the retail industry. In this final episode of Season 7, I'm going to give you a quick recap of key moments from some of the 25 episodes from this year. And if you'd like to get involved in the next season of the podcast as a guest, or of course as a sponsor, drop me a message on LinkedIn and then grab your cup of tea, sit back and listen in as I recap 2024 on the Retail Tea Break podcast. So first up this year, we were joined by the brilliant Vinny O'Brien, who has worked with some of the biggest brands and strategy and training roles all over the globe. This was such a refreshingly, interesting invested conversation full of great examples from Vinny. So if you're curious about e-commerce, definitely grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in, because we talk about the shape of e-commerce in 2024, and actually so much of that is still valid now as we rock into 2025. He gives great e-commerce examples, as I said, and we looked at the consumer aspect of that as well. We also talked briefly about this decision that so many retailers and brands are making at the moment to re-platform. And then we talk about a topic that I have to say I'd never thought of before, but actually this whole idea of staffing and retention kept coming up this year. So Vinny gave us his insight into how that's shaping the e-commerce players in the market at the moment. Next up then was creative entrepreneur and leading fashion designer Aideen Bodkin. It was brilliant to have her on as founder of Style AI. And in her episode, Aideen talked about how she wanted to use her knowledge and expertise to influence change in the fashion industry. She'd started to look at the fashion problem of returns. And again, this has become a key topic this year in 2024, because for her, she could look at it from the fashion perspective, from the retailer's perspective, but also from the shopper. So from all of her research, Aideen was able to pinpoint 3 key issues that we talk about in this episode. And again, we also looked into, does fashion really work online? How could we improve that? The issues, of course, for consumers and shoppers buying fashion online, whether it's sizing, suitability, representation, and then the bigger issue. We did talk about that returns issue, fast fashion sustainability. Aideen has some incredible thoughts backed up by data when we talk about that. And then finally, of course, we talk about her new product, Style AI. Next up was the brilliant Brian Liebrock, author of the Retail Leaders Roadmap. I recommended this book only last week to a student who was looking to do a really deep dive into leadership. It is an incredible book. I think it stands the test of time because Brian says it exactly how it is. He'd followed in his father's footstep, his grandfather's footstep, all of whom had been brought up in retail. And his career, as he talks about on this episode, sees him climb that corporate ladder and fall down a few times. And he won't mind me saying that, but you know what? The learnings in there is really what we all need to take away. He really appreciates the need to juggle business tasks with nurturing people to enable growth. And that's something every retailer and brand is looking for right now. He continues to channel his passion for coaching, mentoring, and leading through the book and in this incredible episode, because we talked about why he felt he had to write the book. We talked about the 3 pillars that he's framed the book with: build your character, build your connection, and then build your plan, which I think all retail leaders would agree is the best way to go about it. We briefly talk about some of the mistakes he's made, and haven't we all over the years, but Brian's learned from them. We talk about this idea of paying it forward, which is a gorgeous kind of harmonious look at the retailing at its best, and he really describes it so well. And then finally, we talk about, well, actually, as retail leaders, should we put the task first to put the product on the shelf, to get that business open, or do we put the people first? And then ironically, this led us into Linda Johansson James episode, which came up next. Linda, again, is someone that really champions our people. She's a real believer in training. Linda's founder and CEO of the International Retail Group. The billion-dollar brand maker specializes in brand launches, in-store design, sales, training, which she's so famous for, franchising, and has a track record of generating. Are you ready for this figure? $1.7 billion in revenue. And she also attacks incredible top brands. This was a stunning episode. And actually, when we look back at it now, it's the first of 3 episodes we've had with Linda in 2024. So we started talking about, adding to that shopping cart in the mall, what it looked like and how it built her career, nurturing retail staff, which she's so famous for. Going back to basics, another one of these key trends for 2024. You can get all your fancy screens and you can get all your fancy tech and retail media, but without the basics, everything else falls apart. So it was an incredible episode in 67 with Linda Johansson James. Next up, then, in episode 68, I was joined by 3 special guests, Aileen Geraghty, Sharon Conlon, both of whom are founders of Bio, and Kira Petty from Kira Petty Design Studios. This was a fabulous episode, so heartwarming, and it really just caught to the essence of bringing a retail brand to life in a physical premises. It was absolutely fantastic. So the episode explores the journey that BO has taken over the last while to design and develop their new store, which is stunning, by the way, in the heart of Ennis here in Ireland. The beautiful retail space combines a coffee shop, a community space, and of course then this retail offering too, all thanks to Kira's guidance as their retail designer. From strong brand values to stalking the landlord, this episode is definitely one not to miss. We talk about BO putting down roots there in Ennis, having gathered such a strong following and community, and then building out that retail space, the coffee shop and the studio space. We talk about those strong brand values and really how it's carried the brand over the last few years, and they were then able to turn that and deliver exactly what their customer wanted. Kira takes us through real life experiential retail, and from concept design to space planning for a new retail store. And then let's be honest, we had to talk about the challenges of setting up a new retail store, especially for such an established brand. And then that idea of bringing the brand to life with strong retail design that, of course, had to be led by customer experience. It's a brilliant episode. Next up, then, on the Retail Tea Break podcast in 2024, Kieran Ganja, CEO and founder of Rapid Pricer, joined me, the author, the entrepreneur with over 18 years' experience launching innovative technologies from around the world. This was a really interesting episode as we did a deep dive into pricing. We talked about everything from rice to spice to mangoes. I absolutely loved it. Kieran talks about using AI to support better pricing so that we're really reactive to what the customer wants. We talked about the importance of pricing with sustainability, his retail pricing book, and also pricing principles that are key to strategize for retailers and brands today. The next episode then was an absolutely gorgeous one. I got to talk to Anthony Gallagher, founder and managing director of Pet Stop. And you know what? This was just such a brilliant episode for me personally, because for Anthony, who had started out as a trainee in Pennies, he had then built his career and is now such an established, well-respected retailer. He's gone on to open the very first pet superstore here in Ireland. This experienced retailer took note of what pet stores were doing around the world, and he really wanted to develop his own successful business model. This was really honest. It was heartwarming. And, it really got to the kind of key issues retailers are looking at right now. But also, it was full of stories and some fantastic examples. So we also talked about his new store opening that had just happened. He talked about why retail stores are so important for Pet Stop. But on the opposite side of that, Anthony was able to guide us through, how Pet Stops now has one of the most award-winning online presence anywhere. It's a brilliant website that they do have, but of course he has to back it up with some incredible physical retail spaces, which he really does. And at the heart of that, as Anthony says, is this people success story. He really believes in the team that are there and they support him every step of the way. And as well as that, his incredible customers who are so loyal to him. But you know what? Listening to Anthony speak, you can absolutely understand why. The next episode then was a fantastic one that was sponsored by Salesforce, and I had the pleasure of speaking to the incredible Rob Goff. In this episode, Rob, who of course, as most of you know, is no stranger to retail, he talked to me about the challenges that retail was facing. We looked at Salesforce Shopping Index for Q1 of 2024, and of course, we had to talk about AI. So we talked about shopper loyalty, the importance of mobile shopping, which again, I think for some retailers this year has probably been on the back burner a little bit more. We talked about adapting to AI and really using the functionality there, delivering exceptional AI driven customer experiences. And even back early in the spring, we were already talking about Salesforce's holiday predictions. Episode 73 then of the Retail Tea Break podcast, I was joined by two guests who really understand shoppers. Vanessa Henry, Research Director, and Zoe Smith, Research Executive from Walnut Unlimited. They've both got an incredible amount of experience with the retail industry, using a variety of methodologies across projects to uncover true, actionable insights that can help unlock growth in the retail space. Their role, of course, is to understand shopper behavior, getting under the skin of how consumers behave and feel. And they really did that in this episode. They explained exactly what Walnut does for so many retailers and brands out there. Vanessa talked us through how shoppers shop, for want of a better way of phrasing it. And it was a really insightful conversation. Zoe took us through some of the scientific tools, including behavioral science that they use. And again, where we can all learn from this. Plenty of examples and case studies in this episode, and some key takeaways that retailers and brands really should be aware of. The next episode then was with the brilliant Gavin Murphy, Chief Marketing Officer at Scurry. Gavin describes how many retailers and brands are missing huge opportunities to enhance customer experience and to drive loyalty. And it's something that I'm certainly mindful of as we speed towards the festive season. This was an incredible episode that I think will really future-proof your business. So again, grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in as Gavin and I spoke about what Scurry really does and how it works for retailers and brands. We talk about how they really do support retailers to grow. And ironically, back in the spring, we were talking about Black Friday and the Golden Quarter and how much prep Scurry do. So again, if that's something that you've really struggled with over the last few weeks, get in touch with Gavin and the team at Scurry. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. We then talked about hyper-personalization and driving consumer loyalty, and the big one, which I think is just going to get bigger and bigger in 2025, the post-purchase experience and just how important it is. We looked at data driving, that driving of the competitor advantage over who you might be battling space for. And again, future plans and expansion for Scurry. And then the final episode of season 6 back in the spring was with a guest who spent over 30 years in the retail industry. I was absolutely honoured to be joined by Bob Neville, who's worked all over the world with leading sports and footwear brands, including Adidas, New Balance and Under Armour. From redefining operational processes to increasing profits to building high performance and highly engaged teams, Bob really understands customer experience. This was an amazing episode because the strategic global leader has really made his name for himself, driving growth and innovation whilst transforming the retail landscape. And you know what? This was Spotify Wraps #1 episode for me for the year. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go and have a listen because Bob talks about retail. And actually, is there a better word for it? We talk about processes and people. We talk about customer centricity. And the big one for him, the one that's really built his career, the importance of sharing your brand story in a voice that the shopper really understands. Then, back in September, kicking off season 7, I was joined by the Fab Four, top retail experts, Ian Scott, Chris Igwe, Linda Johansson James joined me once again this year, and introducing Torben Valsted. We talked about retail relationships with landlords and centre managers, driving exceptional shopping experiences, whether that be in malls, in bricks and mortar, or of course online. We looked at retail trends and retail theatre. I asked the question, which almost threw a bomb in the middle of the four of them, has retail become too complicated? And then we talked about, and I'm almost saying this quite quietly, technology, because that one word nearly caused an argument. It is a brilliant episode. Do have a listen to the opening season 7 episode with the Fab Four. Next up, then, in episode 77, I was joined by a guest who plays a huge part in modern heritage. It's an Irish brand selling globally. Sarah Murphy is the managing director of Jack Murphy Clothing, establishing themselves as a leader in fashionable, functional, and sustainability clothing. And it still is a family passion. So Sarah is at the helm of a brand that's now 70 years in business, third generation, and it's a legacy brand using meticulous craftsmanship. This episode shares how the brand bounced back from one of the most challenging periods, and Sarah was really honest about how that's affected them. So grab your cup of tea, listen to this gorgeous episode as we talk about marketing a legacy brand, supporting, real brands through really strong retailer relationships. We talk about sustainability because, as Jack Murphy say, we don't just talk sustainability, we live it. We do talk about those challenging times that the brand had through Brexit, through COVID, and then we talk about the bounce back and the incredibly exciting times the brand has ahead. Next up was the brilliant Conrad Daigen, CEO of Shaw's Department Stores, and having worked in various roles for Marks& Spencer and Primark, in late 2021, he became the first non-family CEO at Shaw's, who've just celebrated 160 years in business, which is phenomenal. This was a really special episode, as Conrad describes his excitement about the then new store opening in Athlone. The episode was packed full of insights and stories, and it's just a really gorgeous episode of true retailing. We talked about that new store at Golden Island Shopping Centre in Athlone, the importance of the physical store to Shaw's and their customers. We talk about the fact that realistically, the brand was quite a late adopter to online, but it's working for them now. The importance of really personal customer service, that driving brand values and how the consumer absolutely loves it. And even back then in September and October, we were talking about the run up to the golden quarter that we're now in. Next up was a fairly, new person onto the scene, Rebecca Hoban, or should I say now Rebecca Finn. Congratulations, guys. A co-founder of Out West Clothing and Retail Store. Rebecca just spoke incredibly well about how they're down in Dingle in the depths of Kerry, that the guys have set up this incredible retail store. They opened during a busy bank holiday weekend and they've just learned as they've gone along. She talks passionately about growing the business, empowering the team, and engaging customers. The episode celebrates the incredible journey that her and Shane have been on over the last 2 years, and I have no doubt there are massive things to come. I was joined again then by the Fab Four top retail experts, Ian, Chris, Linda, and Torben, as we now talked about people. This was so important to us that we wanted to give it an episode all of its own. We talked about the importance of proper retail training, that it does increase sales, but it's got to be driven and it's got to be followed up. We talk about the fact that we did wonder, is product training necessary anymore? As most consumers have mobiles in their pockets, laptops at their fingertips, did the person on the floor need to have that too? We looked at footfall and actually why driving footfall into stores where standards are so poor could be detrimental for brands. We looked at the really nasty issues right now of retention and the fact that, are we paying our staff enough? Are our benefits been taken away? Why has it become so hard to hire good people? And then finally, for all four, we talked about what was coming next for them in 2025. Episode 81 saw me joined by the brilliant Peter Cohen, strategy consultant, startup investor, author, and columnist. We talked about his new book, Brain Rush: How to Invest and Compete in the Real World of Generative AI. We talked about his new idea of value pyramid. And I have to say, if you haven't listened to episode 81 yet, jump in there and listen to how Peter describes the best way to use AI right now for your retail business. We talked about the payoffs this has for retail, bringing the CEO and the directors on board to really push AI use across the business. And actually, we talked about the interesting topic of, can people in retail AI proof their careers, or does he really believe that AI will take most of the jobs away? We then spoke about future plans, both for him and where he thinks AI is going in the future. The following episode, I was joined by the gorgeous Alison Hogg, MBE, CEO and founder of Vita Librata. My goodness, you'll really hear from Alison that she is driven by a passion to bring quality, meaningful products back to the market the way people and consumers really want. Alison was at the helm of this brand years ago, and it's fantastic to see that she's back there now. The brand saw meteoric growth since its inception through its disruption of the self-tan industry, and she has incredibly exciting plans for the future. We talk about how Vita Liberata started, all the different balls she was juggling at the time, and I suppose she talked to us about the reality of growing a business. It isn't all glamorous, as she says. There's delegation, there's teamwork. She's now surrounded by an incredible bunch of people who are growing the business at a rate of knots. It's a brilliant episode. So if you haven't, do go back and take a listen. Only a few weeks ago, then, I was joined by Vivian Wrong McKendry, founder of One More Thing, the brand that promotes sustainable living through beautiful, eco friendly products. And in the episode, Vivian talks about the collaboration she's had that's taken her work to Selfridges. She's now back in Kildare Village with the latest pop up. But her commitment to sustainability and innovation continues to inspire and set new benchmarks. I think this is a brand to watch. Vivian is unbelievably creative. She pulls in her background, her creative career before One More Thing. She'd seen a gap for the market when she created Everbloom's preserved flowers. She now has a new candle concept. But again, this is a business that's growing. She's utilized a pop-up store, and I have no doubt this is only the start for them. In episode 84, I was joined by a business Imagineer who focused on building growth, unleashing relationships in symbiosis between commercial understanding and shopper insights. The brilliant Torben Valsted, Chief Imagineer, who's worked in the past, as he says, for CNN, Carlsberg, Nike, and Nestle. Torben, as you'll hear from this episode, and on that note, if you haven't watched it, please do pop over to YouTube. Torben had built this incredible video that played behind him as we spoke, and it really focuses you on exactly what he's talking about because he's so incredibly knowledgeable. We talk about the changing marketplace currently, how branding died, he feels, in 2008 and not for the reasons that you might think. We talk about the shopperverse and the 360 experience. We talk about brand strategy and communication. The solution that he's now building that brings the shopperverse to life with vibe and building an emotional connection. A gorgeous episode. And as I say, if you haven't watched it, pop over to YouTube and take a look at episode 84. Next up, then, Eamon Grant and John Sheard from ESW join me for episode 85. Their teams empower the world's best loved retailers and brands to make global shopping better, safer, simpler, and faster end to end. An incredible episode where they explain to me what ESW do, the current challenges facing retailers right now, and why retailers are coming to them for support. We look at omni-channel demand and variation by different market, different location. They talk about how they can utilize retailers and brands with ESW support to bring value to the customer experiences. And then, as this was only a few weeks ago, we talked about delivering holiday magic to ensure customers are having a happy, worry-free holiday season. And if that's something you want for your shoppers next year, get in touch with the guys. Then, as Black Friday dawned, Anne Barber joined me from Butterslip. She'd won numerous awards and accolades, as well as loyal customers with 20 years' experience running the incredible store. The store is remarkable for its colourful displays inside and out, for the joy which it embraces, and its customers. This was a gorgeous episode that really spoke to the truth of both shoppers and, of course, retailers who were grafting day in and day out. And as you'll hear, it's a really passionate independent retailer. She really feels responsible for playing a really good role as part of the community and creating a vibrant town experience. We talked about positivity in retail, creating an easy and uplifting customer journey, which is easier said than it is done, nurturing the lifetime value of the customer. And Anne shares some gorgeous stories as we talk about, thriving as an independent retailer. And then finally, to finish up that episode, we talked about what's next as the brand celebrates 20 years in business in just a few months' time. And then finally, last week's episode of the Retail Tea Break podcast was with the brilliant Andy Tyra from Akenio. Andy is the Chief Product Officer there, and he strives to deliver product information management solutions for brands and retailers, contributing to a seamless and positive customer journey. Andy was previously a founding member of Amazon Fresh and AWS Marketplace, building businesses to materiality from the very beginning. This was a fascinating episode for me because Andy explained exactly what a product experience company does and how they can support their customers. I questioned him about actually then whether that customer comes first or whether the data should. And he talks me through, his idea based on his experience. We talked about the barriers that retailers are facing right now and the fact that they don't have to be facing them alone. We looked at that key topic of returns again, but also regulation that's coming down the line, preparing for the digital product passport here in Europe. And we've got a brilliant case study about the Swedish clothing brand Aska and how they're utilising Akenio's product right now. So that's 24 episodes in 2024. It's been a phenomenal year. I've given you a quick whirlwind tour there of exactly what's gone down. Do go back and listen and tell me what your favourite one is, because if you've enjoyed the podcast this year, please make sure you've subscribed to it. Leave me a comment. Let me know which episode has been your favourite. And remember, of course, you can listen back to all previous Retail Tea Break episodes from the last 3 years on your favourite podcast platform, or of course over on YouTube. And as I said right at the beginning, if you'd like to get involved in the next season of the podcast as a guest or as a sponsor, drop me a message on LinkedIn or email me, melissa@theretailadvisor.ie. Thank you for listening in 2024, and I will see you in 2025 for season 8 as we head towards our 100th episode.